Alright, today's going to be about leveling a pier and beam house. And one thing, first off, I like to level a pier and beam house in the wintertime when it's cooler. There's less bugs, it's easier to wear a full jumpsuit where the dirt doesn't get in your clothes so bad. And just in general, it seems like it's easier to deal with under the house in the wintertime, or at least the cooler months. So, anyways, if it is in the summertime, I definitely recommend, in addition to everything else, lots of bug spray. In fact, I'll even fog the underside of a house before I start in the summertime. I don't want to run into any, what do they call those, brown recluse spiders? That's exactly the kind of place they live. But in general, it's nice to get rid of the bugs. If you start saving up materials before you actually start the job, you can get a lot of stuff for free. Of course, if you know you're going to be leveling a pier and beam house, save all the cinder blocks you can save. Also save any flat blocks of concrete that you can save. You're going to need a ton of blocks to raise things up. Old landscaping, it doesn't have to be pretty, it can be just scrap rock really. Anything with two flat edges is good enough to use. You're going to want to save all the scraps of treated lumber that you can find. I dug this piece out of a dumpster. You know, it's too short for anybody to use for most anything else, but it's very handy to use when you're raising up a pier and beam house. Use a ton of those. You can't possibly have too many of them. Alright. Something else you're going to need a ton of is jacks, especially if you're doing the job by yourself. The more jacks the better. In fact, sometimes on the weekend that I know I'm going to be doing the actual job, I'll go to the home center and I'll buy extra jacks and I'll save the packaging. And yes, I will take it back the Monday after I'm done. But as you can see from the number of jacks that I have, I'm still a good customer because I've still ended up with a bunch of bottle jacks from various different jobs leveling a pier and beam house. A couple more things on jacks. I prefer the very smallest ones that you can buy. Sometimes they almost don't even sell the really small ones anymore, but if you're going to use a lot of jacks, you really don't need that many jacks. And it's better not to put too much pressure on the house in one spot. Although, you do need at least one big, this is a 12-ton, 10 or 12-ton jack, because there will be times when you're just in a bad spot and you just can't get a whole lot of jacks in a particular area, like a corner or something like that. You just need to be able to produce a lot of lift. So you will need at least one of those big ones. On these jacks, one thing that'll make your life easier is don't forget they have this little part that screws up. So when you're adjusting your jack to get to raise it to the height to make contact initially with the beam under the house, don't forget about that little feature of the jacks. The alternative is stacking a bunch of blocks underneath your jack, and that can be very time consuming. A couple of other things when you're under the house working on jacks. Plan to have lots of blocks to put underneath them to increase the footprint underneath the jack, because if you just put the jack down on the ground by itself, as you start applying pressure to it, it'll just drive itself into the ground and it won't lift the house at all. So you need nice wide footprints underneath the jack. And I recommend light wood because you're going to be moving that stuff around a lot. Use a big cement pad or something like that. A, that can crack, and B, it's heavy and difficult to move around underneath the house. Other tools I save up on all the time because you never know when you're going to use them. Old frying pans. Anytime you go to a garage sale and you get old frying pans, if you think you're ever going to be leveling a house, save these. I'll tell you how these come in handy. You put put the frying pan down on the ground and then put a 1x4 on top of that. You can nail that after you get the house level. You can nail that 1x4 to floor joists, and then you don't even have to worry about using treated ones of these, because you can put just the tiniest bit of motor oil in the frying pan. It'll absorb it to the wood, it'll keep the wood from sinking down in the mud, and it'll keep termites off of it. And it can really stiffen up a span underneath your house if you put one of these on every floor joist. If the house was poorly designed and doesn't have enough beams for the floor to be good and stiff, you can really stiffen up the floor of a pier and beam house like that, so it's not so bouncy. Other things, obviously you're going to need light under there, so get yourself plenty of these little light things, power strips, so you can plug a lot of these in. You know, things like that. You want to get it all into place, get them set up so you don't have to move those around a lot. Just get a bunch of them under there. Another thing I start saving up if I'm going to be doing a pier and beam house leveling job is cardboard. And the cardboard, I just get a razor and cut it in as long as strips as I can get. And why cardboard? It's really easy to slide on the cardboard and it helps keep you cleaner. Underneath, keeps all the dirt and dust off of you. In addition, the cardboard, I may actually cut these in narrower strips, like I'll cut these tabs off so it's just one narrow strip. But for this piece I'm just going to demonstrate, so I'm going to cut another piece off. Sometimes when you're working under the house, you got to actually dig dirt out, which is a good time to mention that you also need a shovel. And with a shovel, I oftentimes just have the actual spade of the shovel. So I have an old shovel that doesn't have a handle at all. So just enough to use with one hand. Most of the dirt is powder underneath the house like this. Sometimes you have to make room for yourself. So what I'll do is I'll have my trail of cardboard everywhere I need to travel, and then I'll just scoop the dirt and put it on a loose piece of cardboard. And you can actually slide a lot of dirt out at a time on just the cardboard sliding on top of each other. It's a pretty quick way to handle moving dirt out of your way. Alright, now cutting spacer blocks, you need just tons and tons of these spacer blocks. And I like to have different thicknesses because you never know what you're going to need. When you're jacking the house up, you don't want to come back down any further than you have to. So when I jack it up, I like to be able to slide spacers underneath there and be able to kind of get it exact. So I have lots of 1.5 by thickness material, and then a lot of 3/4 inch thick material, and then a lot of this is just a scrap of laminate flooring or whatever. It's a good like about 1/4 inch thickness here or whatever. It's really handy to have lots of scraps like this. Last thing, and you're just going to need tons of them. So get the skill saw out and cut yourself tons and tons of little scraps like that. You'll be amazed how many that you use. Another thing you're going to need is little scraps of metal. This is an old drill bit thing, but mainly it's a piece of metal. What I use these for is to drop them on top of the piston of the jack, the hydraulic jack here. And it increases the surface area on top so that it doesn't punch through your little blocks of wood. Because you don't, when you're underneath the house, you don't ever want to put the piston of the jack right up to the beam of, under your house where you're jacking. You always want to have pad wood. So you can take a strip of pad wood, and what you'll find is your pad wood wears out too. It'll get holes punched in it from the piston, the pressure from the piston. One thing that makes everything last longer, if you take this, you can use flat pieces of metal, but something like this, the cylindrical, actually stays on top of the jack better when you're down there working, and it just increases the life of these pad blocks that you're going to use to protect the beams in your house. Another thing, in particular for the pad blocks, I like to use scraps of oak from pallets because the oak is just tougher wood and it holds up longer too. A lot of pressure on that one point. And that pretty much wraps up the materials that you need to do a pier and beam house. I'll have a list of these materials on the blog page. Thanks.